I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm sitting here with two friends of mine from Corsa. We have Carolyn Raab, who is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the company, and also Yuri Kolomiyets. Did I say that right?
Yes, yes.
I'm practicing a little bit. And Yuri is a solution and product manager and architect for the company. It's nice to see you both.
Thank you, Ed.
As in, Corsa is a Canadian company.
We are. We're based in Ottawa.
Well, nice place to be.
Yeah, and most people think in the summer it's a nice place to be. Yeah, we've been around 5 years. Mm-hmm. We started, our roots are in SDN,
right,
in networking. We all have that background. And we really saw an opportunity at that time, in the networking space, specifically switching and routing, with the movement towards disaggregated hardware and software. And our DNA is hardware,
right,
very performant flow forwarding, and sort of that's how we started. And now, as you know, we've moved into network security. Mm-hmm. So taking all of that and applying it now to our latest platform that we introduced to the market about a year ago.
That's great. I remember I joked back to you when we first started talking, and you really knew what you were talking about. You said, I'm in sales and marketing. I said, I don't think you sound like a sales and marketing person. You sound like a gearhead engineer to me.
Yeah,
so
most of us are at the company.
I think that's in the DNA of the company.
It
right?
is, yes.
Yeah. Yuri, tell us about yourself. How did you get into this business?
Yeah, so I've been a network engineer basically all my career, and Corsa is the first startup. As they say, you have to do the rite of passage for a technical person. You have to work for a startup. So this is my rite of passage.
You picked a good one.
I'm very happy, with it, and we're doing something quite different from what the other folks are doing. We're still a hardware company, and there are not that many startups in hardware. Hardware seems to be a dirty word these days, but we think we're the exception. We're not like all the other hardware companies.
Well, let's talk about that. The reason I think you guys are doing hardware is that you're dealing with ultra high capacity networks, right? Am I reading that right? Like, to deal with the kind of capacity and speed that you target, a lot of these functions need to be done in hardware. Is that right?
That's right. As Carolyn said, we're a networking company, and sooner or later, you really need pieces of hardware to move those packets around. And for the same reasons, just like you need to move those packets, you need security to be hardware enabled and accelerated to deal with these speeds. And we're the ultra high capacity device that allows you to build your network security in a very new and innovative way, rather than try to bolt on something that you've done before. You don't have to re-architect the network in any way, and you can just fit network security functions into the network that you already have.
Now, we're sitting here in 2018. What are the types of capacities that you're talking about here? You're talking well north of 10 gig, right? Are you talking the 100 gig range?
That's right. We're 100 gig device, so you can obviously do multiple 10 gigs, but it's definitely meant for 100 gig networks. And our other claim to fame is that we're invincible from the performance perspective. You can turn on every function on the device, you can do everything the device does, and you can turn it on, and the performance does not degrade.
Those are really high capacities, and for anybody that does networking, the conception of 100 gig is pretty spectacular. It's big wires.
But not just so. The challenge with 100 gig is not necessarily not always just the bandwidth, but it's the packet rate.
Right.
So everybody knows how traditional middle boxes suffer from small packets. We don't have that problem. We don't suffer from small packets. You can put the smallest package you can, every one of them back to back, and we still perform at the same rate.
And you're well north of 100 million packets per second. 150 is
150 is the theoretical. 148 is the theoretical maximum on a 100 gig link one way, and we do both ways. So almost 300 million packets on a 100 gig wire.
So Carolyn, when you first described the product to me, you were talking about kind of bump on the wire. Mm-hmm. Is that an important use case, like the idea that you guys sort of glomp on to these big high capacity networks and provide functions literally inline, as opposed to you're not teed off here, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
And to what you were saying about the 150 megapascal packets per second. I mean, we need that to sit in line as a bump in the wire. So the whole premise of the platform that we've introduced, we call it a universal control point. It's effectively a next generation SDN firewall in its use. So it sits in line. For our customers, it's a simple matter of fiber in one end and fiber out the other. And so we have this wire model abstraction. And then as our platform sits online, and we kind of laugh because as a hardware appliance vendor, it's a judicious use of hardware, just enough hardware to properly move packets. And what we're doing with those packets is under the control of the Security Operations Center, the SOC, or the SIM, or the analytics tools, where we can serve visibility up to those tools from our bump in the wire. We can receive rules or commands to enforce traffic, so basically to filter out bad stuff. And the third really important thing about the bump in the wire is that it can act as a service chaining element. So we can classify traffic off into any number of virtual security services that could be stood up permanently as appliances, or, as we all hope, moving forward, dynamically stood up and down.
So that service chaining and the dynamic element, it's like the most powerful thing on a big network, because what I think people do now is they do these static architectures.
Right.
You guys can construct
dynamically,
gauntlets.
You can have.
Is that right? Am I describing that right?
That's right. So imagine, kind of the way I explain it, the easiest way to think about it is if you have two routers, you have a piece of fiber between them. Now imagine if you had 500 pieces of fiber between them, and you could decide which packet goes on which one of those 500 pieces of fiber. That's your service chain. So on each one of those service chains, you can put whatever devices you want in line, either to inspect them, enforce them, do whatever you want, reassembly. You can mess with traffic any which way you like. And our device provides bidirectional symmetric load balancing between all of these things. You can have up to 500 different service chains. You can have 128 devices within each service chain. So it gives you massive scale. We support both physical appliances, virtual appliances in these service chains. That's the sort of the SDN promise. That's what SDN was promised to do, and this is what we're doing in security today.
Carolyn, I'm guessing service providers like this product. It seems like it's ready-made for anybody operating at those speeds.
Definitely. Right? I mean, they're the ones with the big pipes. They need to protect them. They need to know what's going on in their network and be able to act if there are performance issues, if there are bad actors on the network. So they are absolutely, but it's not limited to just the service providers. It's truly a platform for anyone with large capacity networks. And so, we instantly think of the financial sector. Sure. We think of, for instance, all of our research and education networks where they are doing large science, big data experiments, the pharmaceutical industry, anybody with large networks. So
that would seem to me to be kind of the cornerstone of the marketing, right? You've got a big network, then you probably ought to be thinking about some sort of big mitigation, big visibility. That's very interesting. Let's talk cybersecurity now. What kinds of things can you catch with your box? Like, is it a lot of detecting good versus bad data, and is that kind of the idea? Like, for example, if there was you wanted to blind out some geolocation, that's probably natural. But what are the cybersecurity implications here? What can you actually?
So I mean, the box is different in a basic sense that it's different from a firewall, where a firewall by default is deny everything, and then you figure out what it is that you want through. We're kind of our concept is comes from the fiber and the wire world, where we say, well, it's just a bump on the wire, so by default everything goes through. And then through your analytics, whatever those analytics may be.
Well, packet filters work like that for many years. Right?
Sure. And you basically say, well, today I need a lot more sophistication in figuring out what's good and what's bad than just having a single simple device deciding, well, that signature is matched or that signature isn't. We've seen use cases where with data exfiltration where people seemingly have legitimate traffic, right? The traffic looks completely legitimate. It goes through the firewalls, and yet financial records or other sensitive data comes out, and you really need other analytics tools that we interop with, we operate together in conjunction with, to catch these things. So now you'll have a tool from a vendor like Interset or Nixon or any other analytics engine that just sits and analyzes your data. There's a lot of vendors out there that focus on visibility today, and through that visibility they can catch a lot of different things, and then the action of actually blocking and mitigating this either attacks or incidents can be fully automated. Like that's where it comes in our platform, that you no longer need to do all this manually through humans looking at humans. You can now speed all this up to the speed of software and hardware, where now you can mitigate attacks and incidents in real time. We have about 2 milliseconds reaction time from when the rule is sent to us to the rule is actually done it's implemented in hardware and it's active. And these rules can be anything. They really can deal with pretty much any problem. They don't only have to be a blocking rule. We can also implement the service chaining rule or a redirection rule or a copy rule. So now you can identify traffic that is of interest, and maybe you can send it to a more deeper inspection forensic device. So now you can implement very simple playbooks of just saying, okay, this is what I've identified that's bad, like you said, from this is geolocation, geofenced or something else. But you can build way more sophisticated playbooks where you say, okay, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but I have a suspicious activity, maybe suspicious rates of connections coming in from somewhere else, as indicated by my server that's being accessed. That's not something your firewall would notice. So now your server or your other telemetry will give you an indication that something suspicious is going on. You can maybe give different treatment to this traffic. Again, everything at 100 gig with no performance degradation. You can give different treatment to this traffic, and then over time, as you collect more and more data, you can get more sources, more metadata from different places. You could get higher confidence of what is going on, and then eventually you can either block stuff or send it to a honeypot or do something else.
Very interesting. Carolyn, as a marketing person, you must have fun trying to figure out how to
capture that in one sentence.
Because it's really a gateway, right? It's a backbone gateway that you're dealing with here.
It's a gateway, and I think that when we do talk to people, what we bring to the table is the ability to actually automate their cybersecurity. So they have all of this information from the analytics tools. So there's the inspection, there's the analysis, there's the identification of attacks, but this time to remediation is a big issue still. And what we can do then with our platform is we close the loop for the SOC and let them have a place to go to actually exercise the playbooks. The playbooks are telling them things, but when it tells you, okay, I've now identified, now do something, we're that do place. And that bump in the wire can react in milliseconds, can shut down the traffic, but it can also help with any form of workflow, from fully manual to semi-automated right through to automated.
Yeah. Yuri, let's talk future here. So I remember, it didn't seem like too long ago, when the backbone providers here in the US had 100 gig in their concept, like, wow, could we get our backbone to that size? And now that's in our rearview mirror. Where's this all going? Did capacity just keep growing? Have they leveled off? Is it just more people operating at this rate? What's happening?
So 100 gig is definitely on the rise in the adoption. We see the enterprise is still not quite at 100 gig. Definitely the service providers are, and all the Web 2.0 companies and all the high scale cloud, all those guys are at 100 gig. There's still a lot of 100 gig to be adopted. Yeah. Folks are still struggling with 10 to multi-10 to 100. But the cybersecurity at those speeds is definitely a challenge. It's not a solved problem. How exactly you do it, and it's not really a defined, well-defined architecture out there that says, yes, this is definitely a cookie cutter thing, that this is how you do it. The problem, what we see today is that every industry or every vertical is very different. The threats are different. The data that people are after, the people who are after the data are different, from nation states to people who do it for profit to just random people trying stuff out. It's all very custom to every organization. Depends on who your customers are, what your data is, what your industry is. And with our architecture and our ecosystem, we pretty much fit into any of them. We don't prescribe saying, well, this is how you should do any one network or another. But definitely if your problem is doing security at very high speed with very large bandwidths, that's something that you need to look at.
If I could just add, there's also a couple things that we are watching and know will affect the network, as a lot of people do, but 5G is one very big change to the network.
Software-defined infrastructure in 5G, right?
Exactly, and the whole concept of network slicing, because we're always talking high capacity, we are always essentially in those, for instance, metro aggregation points where you will want to do things differently when 5G really comes on.
Right.
And so that would be one area for us that we see things.
A growth area for the company.
And a growth area for us. Yeah. And so along with that is IoT and smart cities. And I'm not conflating the two, but they can also be, they will do interesting things to our network, because we suddenly have all of these points of entry into networks that are different from what we have traditionally had. And I think that will also be
add a lot of traffic, that's for sure.
Generating a lot of traffic and
telemetry
threat surface changes. Yeah.
Awesome. If people want to learn more about what you're doing, is the website the right place to start?
Website's a great place to
We'll
go.
Pop it up on the screen there for people to look at.
We love to talk.
No, that's good.
But website's a great starting spot.
They can contact you through the site and hear more about what you're doing. Maybe come up and visit you in Ottawa.
That'd be great.
That's not a bad place to work.
Not at all.
So. Well, I'm so glad you could visit us in New York City today.
Yeah, thanks.
It's great to see you both. Wish you all keep doing good work for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time.